Margaret Davis had run the Main Street stationery store for 42 years, and her favorite spot was the old wooden chair behind the counter, positioned perfectly to view both her shop and the street outside. At 78, she'd become something of a Main Street historian, watching the daily drama of small-town life unfold through her store window. This Christmas season was no different. From her perch, she noticed young Tom Henderson from the hardware store stealing glances at Sarah, the new baker next door, every morning when she opened her shop. Sarah, in turn, always seemed to need an unusual number of screws and nails lately. "They're both so shy they'll never speak to each other," Margaret muttered to herself, arranging her window display of holiday cards and journals. She also noticed Mr. Peterson walking his dog past her window 3 times daily since his wife passed away, looking more lost each time. And there was Katie, the high school art teacher who lingered outside the empty gallery space across the street every afternoon, sighing at its for lease sign. Margaret's stationery store had always been more than just a business. It was where people came to find the perfect card to say what they couldn't say themselves, or to buy a journal to hold their secret dreams. Over the years, she'd become an unofficial confidant to half the town. "Just looking for a sympathy card," Mr. Peterson had said yesterday, his voice rough, "though I suppose it's silly to send one to myself." Instead of a card, Margaret had handed him a leather-bound journal. "Write to her," she'd suggested gently. "Every day. It helps." She'd watched him take his usual walk this morning, the journal tucked under his arm. Today, Sarah came in seeking fancy paper for her bakery's holiday menu. As Margaret helped her choose, Tom from the hardware store entered, pretending to be fascinated by fountain pens. "Sarah," Margaret called out, "could you help me remember the name of that special screwdriver Tom recommended for my cabinet hinges last week? He's right there if you'd like to ask him." Both of them blushed furiously, but they finally spoke to each other. As Christmas drew closer, Margaret's quiet orchestrations continued. She mentioned to Katie that Mr. Peterson had been looking for someone to teach evening art classes to seniors, just something to get him out of the house. She casually told Mr. Peterson that many widowers found purpose in learning new skills. When the art classes began in January, they would meet in the back room of Margaret's shop, the space she'd been using for storage, but that was still to come. Her greatest triumph came during the town's Christmas festival. Sarah had baked cookies for the event, but needed help transporting them. Margaret suggested asking Tom, knowing his hardware store's delivery van was perfect for the job. By the end of the evening, they were sharing hot chocolate and making plans for dinner. On Christmas Eve, Margaret sat in her favorite chair, watching the snow fall on Main Street. Mr. Peterson walked past, waving his journal at her. He was teaching his dog new tricks now, finding joy in small moments. Katie rushed by with paint samples, excited about the lease she'd just signed for the gallery space. Sarah and Tom strolled past hand in hand, pausing to admire the Christmas lights. As she prepared to close the shop, her last customer of the day was her granddaughter Emma. "Grandma," she said, setting down a cup of tea, "why don't you ever write your own story? You've helped create so many happy endings for others." Margaret smiled, looking out at her beloved Main Street. "My dear," she said, "I am writing my story. Every day, in the lives of the people I watch over. Sometimes the best stories are the ones we help others tell." That night, as the Christmas lights twinkled along Main Street, Margaret finally took one of her own journals from the shelf. On the first page, she wrote, "The view from my window, 42 years of Main Street stories." Because sometimes the best observers of life's little dramas deserve to tell their own tale too, even if they think their role is just to watch from the window as love blooms, grief heals, and dreams take flight on a snowy small-town street. And if anyone noticed that their local stationer had a peculiar knack for being in the right place at the right time with exactly the right words of encouragement, well, that wasn't magic. It was just Margaret, writing her own quiet story in the margins of everyone else's happy endings.